Hey guys, welcome back on the channel. Tonight's video is going to be one of most entertaining videos. Once again, thanks to one of our subscribers and my student, Ash. Thank you so much. Ash is, by the way, a poker pro player. Why am I actually mentioning this? Because he asked me to teach you how to play against the Petrov defense in Paul Morphy's way. Paul Morphy was one of the most attractive players of all times, and he's the one who came up with the system against always hard to crack Petrov defense for black. So once again, why am I telling you about Ash and his poker abilities? Because you will see his all-in skills in this variation and in this actually choice of the line for white. So how do we reach this position? e4, e5, knight f3, and symmetrical knight f6 goes into one of the most solid systems in the history of chess with black pieces against e4. It's called Petrov defense. Petrov is always popular, in candidates matches. For example, Gelfand used to do it. Kramnik used to play it sometimes. So Karpov used to play it like all these years against Kasparov. So it's meant to be like a tough nut to crack. And if you want to avoid all those theoretical lines, Scotch, Rye Lopez, 4 knights, and all those gambits, you just go with Petrov. And now you all know that two main moves are either knight takes e5 or d4. But I'm not going to show you any of this. On Ash requests, I'm going to show you bishop c4. It's called Morphy Gambit. So what's the point of this bishop c4? After bishop c4, you just sack your pawn on e4. Take a look at this pawn, and it's very difficult for black not to accept this sacrifice. There is only one more possibility here for black. It's knight c6. Then you have to be ready for the 3 knights variation, and you either have to be ready for a boring d3 type of Italian game that is very popular nowadays in the world of chess, or you just have to be ready for a fried liver attack with knight g5, which is going to be one of our topics in the next videos. Anyways, what happens when they just grab this pawn on e4? The real things are coming, and fasten your seat belts and let's get started. So after they take on e4, we play knight to c3. What's so special about this knight takes c3? So when they take on c3, you just take by pawn and you open up both of these bishops. Look at the pawn on c1, look at the, bishop on c1, bishop on c4, look at the knight on f3 that goes after the e5 pawn. You also want to play castles afterwards, and your activity and good and active pieces makes this variation being so special for white. Although, what happens if after, for example, knight c3, they don't accept this sacrifice? If they simply don't accept the sacrifice and they play knight c6, we just enter into a completely different type of position. You should go with knight e4, d5, bishop d3, d takes, bishop e4, you threaten bishop c6 followed by knight e5, castles, castles, rook e1, and in theory, this position is considered to be a little bit better for white. Somebody would say that it's kind of unclear, but Ivanchuk, for example, played it a couple of times for white, and he made it with a lot of success. Then knight f6 is another possibility. So if they don't play knight c6, if they don't take on c3 by playing knight f6, you just take on e5 and they push this pawn up to d5. Makes sense and looks fine for black. When you play bishop e3, they go c6 in order to solidify this pawn on d5. Castles, bishop d6, d4, castles, and bishop f4. What I especially like about white's position here is this knight in the center of the board on e5 possibility to go with the attack on the king's side, but at the same time there are some bad things about this position. If knight on e5 and bishop on f4, all together with rook on e1 and queen on f3 are so good parts of our plan, actually there are like two very suspicious things. Those are knight on c3 and bishop on b3. We gotta do something with these pieces, and usually plans for white in these positions are queen f3, rook e1, and then knight e2, possibly with knight g3, c3 or c4, possibly to break into the center, or go back with this bishop on c2, and like it is going to point the king side, h7 square, and to organize attack for white. After knight c3, practically all Petrov players, without any thinking, take on c3. D takes c3, and there we go. We have the critical position here. What I have to tell you, in theory, this position is considered to be fine for black. After like a couple of hours of preparing this file, actually this video, and preparing for analysis here, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't find a clear way for black. I don't want to say just to equalize, but in many variations, even to get a decent position. You're going to like what's coming here a lot, and for all Petrov players, be absolutely sure that this variation, I'm ready to play against you Petrov guys and to kill you so easily. So what's happening here? You threaten to take on e5. d5 is not going to be playable, so let's go with the worst moves for black. There are like a couple of bad moves. For example, they play knight c6 to defend the pawn, what I expect like by most of your opponents. Boom, knight g5. You threaten with the bishop on c4, f7, they can't defend. They're completely lost. I'm going to give you an easy time after this video just to analyze these positions and to realize how lost is black's game here. Then, instead of knight c6, they go bishop c5. Looks like if you take on e5, I'm gonna make short castle and put my king into safety. Dream on, baby. Knight g5, I'm threatening f7, and when they go castles, queen h5, I'm killing f7 and h7, he resigns. So practically we've seen like two moves, and in both of these moves we just realized that after bishop c5 and knight c6, easily white wins after knight g5. What happens after d6? Looks like I want to solidify my pawn on e5. I'm up a pawn, so do whatever you like. But then you play knight g5 and say your opponent bye-bye. So after bishop e6, they have to do it, otherwise f7 pawn is falling, right? You take on e6 and play queen f3, threatening checkmate on f7, threatening to take on b7. Once again, we could have seen an easy win by white after knight g5. And finally, there is fourth move, queen e7. Like, I realized that you want to play all these moves, and I don't want to play knight c6, d6, not even bishop c5. Queen e7, once again, same story. Knight g5, and you should call it a day. So after f6, bishop f7, king d8, knight e6. What is even funnier, yesterday I played a bullet game like this and I beat somebody, an FM from United States like this. Hope you enjoyed this presentation of these bad variations for black after d takes c3. So we literally, within 1 minute, covered 4 lost moves for black that look very logical. Bishop c5, knight c6, d6, and queen e7. So what on earth black can do here to defend this position? I realized these positions and realized that they can play c6 with a clear idea of going with d5. After we play knight e5, they go d5, and I would like to stop here. Because if you move your bishop, then position is normal. But then the real thing is coming here. Typical Paul Morphy move, short castle. Why do we play short castle? Because after short castle, we want to go with rook e1 and take advantage of this king on e8. If they play straightforward d takes c4, we just take on d8, play knight f7, and we win the rook. That's why they have to play bishop d6. We play rook e1. They can't think of taking on c4 still, and they have to play castles. Once I also had an interesting blitz game where the guy played bishop e6. I knew the analysis and played queen h5. I guess he didn't realize what was I threatening here. I guess he had to play something like castle here. But after castle, I believe that I'm much better after bishop d3. And if he goes g6, let me just kill this guy with probably some knight g6 and lots of sacrifices, and I go for mate. But the thing is, if after he played d takes c4, I just sacked the knight on f7, and here he resigns. Why? Because e6 is hanging, queen is hanging, and they can't stop all these threats at the same time. Bishop on d6, rook on h8, king is weak, rook on e6 is fallen. This is easily winning. So all things considered, after rook e1, they can't touch the pawn on c4 because of some discoveries. They can't play bishop e6 because of queen h5. They have to play castle. We go bishop d3, and I analyzed these positions and came up with following conclusion, that we threaten knight takes f7 followed by queen h5 here, which is also very nice tactics. They have to play queen c7. Thing is, if they play knight d7, which in my opinion looks like one of the most solid opportunities for black, you just swap off these knights and play c4, depriving yourself of the double pawns, and like you're just opening up the game for your bishops. In case they take, probably you should consider taking on h7, playing queen d6, and playing the opposite color bishops, where your king is definitely safer than this one on h7, which makes white's position a little bit better. Old rule, in opposite color bishops without queens, usually those positions are drawn. Opposite color bishops with queens and heavy pieces on the board usually are better for the side who's got safer king. And finally, after d takes c3, there is one more sideline. It's bishop e7. You play knight e5, they go castles. Looks everything's normal. You play queen f3, threatening on f7. They have to play queen e8, and you go castles. I analyzed these positions, and after d6, found really interesting attacking patterns for white after knight to g4. I like this one. Knight to d3 is also possible, but I like knight g4, so when they play knight c6 to play bishop g4 followed by knight e5, you play bishop f4. Keeping like both of these minor pieces around the black's king. Strong light square bishop on c4. Possibility to, use these rooks on the open e file, or placing both of these rooks into the center of the board on e1 and d1 makes white's position really better. That's why we're just coming to the main theoretical approach by black, which doesn't look so logical. So whoever plays this Morphy Gambit for white against Petrov defense, first of all, they have to know a lot of theory. They have to know like bunch of very specific, precise moves for black. And if they don't play like that, you're just going to kill them. Or actually, it's very difficult for them, because they might find themselves in a very dangerous opening position. So they have to play f6. I'll be honest with you, I still remember the very first day when I saw this variation. I saw it in some Russian article, and I saw this f6. I said to myself, if black is forced to play like this, there must be something really wrong about this system. Some guys call this gambit in some other name. Actually, Paul Morphy was the first one who used it, but the very first game that was played in this gambit was in Italy back to 1801, and Mingrelia was white. Let me just show you that game, because here we'll go with knight h4, threatening very concrete queen h5. But let me just show you what happened in the first game that ever played in this system back to, beginning of 19th century. Castles. They go d6. By the way, after castles, white was threatening knight takes c5 followed by queen h5, d6, covering that. Knight h4 threatening queen h5, g6. Guy played f4 to break in the center, to come up with typical idea in these positions. It's f5. I believe this was a mistake of the game. I believe he had to play c6 followed by d5. Usually, that's actually my conclusion. If black can manage to play c6 and d5, at least black can hope for something here. If they allow us to play f5, it's also difficult. This guy didn't want to allow f5, but look what happened to him. Knight f3, he played queen f6, white captured, played bishop g5, black played queen b6, check, white put the king into safety, white now threatened mate in 1, threatened knight takes e5, and after queen d6, took on e5. I guess this was one of those romantic times where black just allowed his opponent to make the masterpiece, took the queen on d1, and boom, checkmate, bishop f7. This was the first game ever played in this system, and I'm very happy that this opening is called and named after Morphy, one of the best players of all times, according to even many GMs and top players. But if not, this opening could be called Morphy Gambit for white. Let's get back to the critical position where they play f6. So when they play f6, you play knight h4. We threaten very obvious queen h5 check to win on the spot. For all of you who don't see what's the point, so if they go something like, I don't know what, d6, queen h5, g6, you have an old trick with knight g6 and the rook on h8 is fallen. They also can play bishop c5 because of the same tricks, and they're all the time just completely lost. That means that black has to go with g6. Black goes with g6 and prevents and stops queen h5 by white. We don't have time for wasting. We immediately break in the center with f4. They can't play any e takes f4. It's so obvious, and this is the second critical moment for this Morphy Gambit. After f4, black has a couple of alternatives used in practice. The one that is not good at all to do here is to take on f4. I'll give you some time to have some fun with these positions and to find the best move for white. You can also put that, for example, in the comments of the video. That would be nice to practice tactics this way as well. But let's take a look at some really critical variations. The worst one also would be f5. It stops f5 by white, threatens this knight on h4, but weakens something else. After knight f3, we threaten this pawn. They play e4, and queen d4 seems to be enough for a big advantage for white. You know, I don't want to go deeper than this because you're already almost winning. If they take, you take. They play queen e5, you play queen e7, you play queen e5, and you should be easily winning. The rest of these things you can analyze by yourself. I'm just here to give you like clear directions what to do. Once again, they can go with this, one of the best ideas that I insist on, c6 followed by d5. You play f5 because they can never touch, since you go with queen h5 and it's knight f5 checkmate. So look at this funny mating pattern into the center of the board in 10 moves. After you play f5, they have to go d5. You play something that is very important in this f takes g6. After d takes c4, you play queen h5. It's very important because some players played a little bit different here and they lost their games with white. You have to play queen h5. You now threaten clearly to play g7 with check and promote new lady. They have to play king d7. And now there is like a very nice choice for white between playing g7 followed by queen g4 and queen takes g7, or believe it or not, playing a little bit unexpected g takes h7. Maybe it looks unexpected, but you threaten knight g6, where you want to win this rook and keep the possibility of promoting new queen. So there are two lines here. They can play king c7 or queen e8. In a game of two players was queen e8, knight g6, and king c7. You can't touch the rook. And here, I like to insist on the following variation very much. I came up with my own novelty here. In the game was g4, which wasn't good. Bishop g4, queen g4, rook h7, and even after h4, black was better. My move is rook f1. That's my novelty. Why? Because if you play short castle, there is possibility of giving check, king h1 with a tempi, and getting like more or less a defendable type of game for black. So you're not supposed to play like this. If you play immediate g4 to defend this queen and to threaten to take the rook, they go bishop g4, nice counter sec, and after rook h7, black was better and black won the game. My novelty rook f1 insists on something else. I don't give you check with tempi. I'm threatening f6 to include one more piece into the attack. When you play bishop g7, I go with this g4 move now. But what's the difference now? When bishop g4, queen g4, rook takes h7, now you have bishop e3, knight e7, and now you haven't committed yourself yet with short castle, so you now have a possibility to make a long castle. What's the current situation here? You're down a pawn, but he's got a weak king. You got a very nice pressure on the d7 knight. He's got a little bit broken pieces, and there is like a slight disharmony in black's game, so I prefer white here. Even though engines would like have a difficult time saying who's better here, I would prefer white because of this disharmony and possibly weaker king for black. And that's what happens after c6. But what happens if they play d6? Whoever plays d6, you play f5. I'll show you a game of mine played against a good friend of mine who's rated around 2200, whom I told about this variation. And he told me, yeah, I know this line, it's absolutely suspicious. I said, don't talk like that before I test you. He said, okay, we can play this 24/7. I'm going to kick your ass. I said, let's go. So after f5, we played this game. He played d6. He didn't know. He actually knew for a queen e7, but let me show you what happened in the game that we played. He played d6. I played f5. And he played queen d7. In case of d5, like counter attack, you play bishop d5, c6, bishop f7. They can't take because of queen takes d8. King e7, take, and f takes g6. Easily better, almost winning position for white. My opponent, without any hesitation, played queen d7, and he smiled like very arrogantly to me playing this queen d7, like, man, I know what I'm doing here. I was pretending like nothing serious was happening because I was still in my preps. I took on g6 and he instantly played queen g4. Looks very interesting because unlike other variations where we come up with crazy tones of tactics, here we just have to trade the queens off. But I was very happy, I remember when I analyzed this position at home, because I just remembered that I have to play h3, bishop d7, and short castle. And that was absolutely enough. I remember that according to some analysis and assessments of the engines, I should be fine. I wasn't remembering how, but I realized with the bishop on c4, rook on f1, nice knight on h4, this pretty much advanced pawn on g6, it should be fine. Look at the games. The game was played 2 nights ago. So, first game, what he did in there. So once again, 2200 guy who plays Petrov for more than 15 years. He played c6. I took on f6. He played d5. When he played this during the game, I didn't feel like too confident. I played bishop d3 to take on h7. Turns out to be the best, oldest moves that I played. e4, and I realized that I couldn't take on h7, and there was something that I was missing here. But I realized I can play bishop g5. Why? He can't take on d3. That happened in the game. He can't take on d3. After the game, we just analyzed some h6, and we had lots of troubles to find refutation against h6. In the game was e takes d3. I came up with check. He played rook e7. There is always this nice g7 move, and after rook g8, there is a puzzle for you. Tactics. Take like 10 seconds, white moves and wins. I played rook f8 check. He played rook f8, and I took on e7. This was the first game that we played that night. Second game, he repeats f4 d6. Sorry, d6. I play f5. He plays queen d7. I took. He plays queen g4. I played h3, bishop d7, castles. The guy now decided to improve. Hey, by the way, I forgot to show you this one. c6, rook f6, d5, bishop d3, 4, bishop g5, and h6. Actually, after the game, I was the one who asked, why didn't you play h6? Because I didn't see, I just felt that the bishop g5 would be the right move, but I didn't see absolutely everything what after that. There is a beautiful combination. Rook takes f8. King takes f8. You can't play rook f8 because you're just going to lose after bishop h6, rook g8, and for example, bishop e2 looks enough, g7, okay, bishop e2, bishop h5, and slowly but surely push this g6 pawn and win the game. Rook f8, king f8 is nice line, rook f1, and in case of king g8, bishop e7, e takes check, check, and when they play like this, you have this very nice fork and you promote the queen. I like it so much. And after king e8, you play g7, and this is especially beautiful line, bishop e2. So you threaten checkmating move. When they take, check, another fantastic sacrifice, and when they take, check. What a beautiful thing. King has to go here, and then you just go with knight g6, and once again you promote. Previously you did it with fork supporting by bishop, this time supported by knight. Fantastic analysis here, and that's why I like this Morphy's variation so much. Ash, thank you so much for requesting and asking for this Morphy Gambit. According to theory and all engines, queen e7 is like much better for black. In the beginning, engines claimed that the queen e7 should be the move. I'm not so sure. After the analysis I'm about to show you, after all the novelties that I prepared for you here, I guess this is going to be one of the main weapons against the Petrov in the months that coming this year. So you just play f5. They have to play queen g7. So do you know how much you have to know to first of all play f6 here, then after knight h4 to play g6, okay, g6 is pretty obvious, and after f4 to play queen e7. It's not easy at all. It's not easy at all. And when you play f5, cold-blooded reaction by black to play queen g7. Come on. I mean, I don't believe that anyone can play like this. In case of g5, you just go queen h5, king d8, knight g6, threatening both of these pieces. They can't take because you just take rook and you're winning. But funny line happens if they go queen e8. Look at this cold-blooded reaction and refutation. You go bishop e2. You defend your queen, and now you want to take the rook on h8. When they play rook g8, you take on h7. Rook is hanging. They have to go rook g7. You play queen h8. What a nice motif to win this bishop on g7 or rook on g7. After rook f7, you have this very nasty bishop c4 move. I keep smiling because I don't see absolutely not an easy line for black to go with to carry out all these threats, especially if they go into the Morphy Gambit. After queen g7, we go with f takes g6. h6, g6, and very important move as a part of our initiative, queen g4. I put the yellow color on the bishop on c8 because it means you can't play d5 easily, man, because your bishop on c8 is hanging. So after queen g4, they can play g5, rook h4, knight c6. According to theory, engines, king d8 should be played. Once again, what are we talking about? You gotta break the castle without any, special threats, and to go with the king in the center of the board, not to be able to castle anymore, just because you want to play d5 and to defend this bishop. But we'll discuss about this position a little bit later. I analyze rook h4, queen h4 line, because they sack exchange, because they have a very intimidating this pawn structure and pawns connected into the center. Don't worry about this. This is easily better for white. After c6, there is novelty by myself. Castles. Nobody play that. Usually people start to react to take like some, I don't know, I would just say they step back after this, but nobody played castles so far. What's the special thing about this? If you play d5, we take on f6. And when they take, bishop g5. They can't stop. Rook e1, queen e4, white is winning. You can have fun at home analyzing these positions, but eventually you're going to realize white is winning. In case of castles and f5, like I want to stop your initial idea with rook f6, bishop g5, d5, bishop e2, we threaten bishop f6, for example, and now you open up the center. That's what you have to do. And this is what I especially like about these positions, because you have these double pawns, but you now fully take advantage of these pawns. They play bishop e6, you once take, and once again you break with c4. So when they play d4, bishop f6, queen g8, c5, they can't take because you take on e5, and that would be fantastic because you broke the center. They play bishop c7, you play bishop e5, you take, play queen g3 threatening on e5, and after f4 you play queen g5. They're falling apart. e5 is hanging. It's extremely bad for black. Rook h4, even though it looks at first glance interesting, is basically nothing. In case of knight c6, we just go with queen g6, knight g6. And there was a game between two Russian guys. Both of these guys are GMs. They drew the game at this point. So after rook h5, you just play g4. And after rook h3, bishop f1. And when the rook comes finally on the only square h7, you play bishop d3. And after rook h3, you once again go with short castle. This is winning, because in worst case scenario, we'll take on f8 and play with the bishop pair. But in the best case scenario, we just want to play king g2 and win this rook that looks without much hope. Speaking of its destiny. These guys may draw, but probably this guy didn't realize that after castles, he can play f4 after the f6 pawn, knight, bishop on f8, and rook on h3. Also, if knight g6, and they don't play rook h5, but rook h7, you play that bishop d3 move. After bishop d3, you're easily better. You threaten to take this bishop and to take the rook. They gotta move the rook, and you now play h4 move. You don't need to be Kasparov here. All you need to remember is just push this pawn and promote it to the queen. You can once again have fun analyzing these positions at home, but believe me, it's much better. I checked this with all engines. It's completely winning for white. Problem is, if you, have problems to understand how can you just push that pawn up to h8 and to promote it to the queen, then worst case scenario, for some reason, somehow you don't remember the analysis, you forgot this h4, take on f8 and play short castle, and with the bishop pair, you need to be better in this type of game. But once again, h4 practically they're moveless here. We've seen two moves. We've seen knight c6, we've seen rook h4. What happens if they play g5 here? Because obviously g6 is hanging. we play g5, knight f5, queen g6, bishop d3. I'm threatening check. I want to use discovery to win the queen. You go with the queen h5, and there we go. Once again, puzzle for you guys. Let's go. 10, 9, 8, and you can count down up to 1. It's queen h5, rook h5, knight g7, and the rook is fallen. Because when you play bishop g7, bishop g6, and the rook is just out of the game. That's why after g5, knight f5, queen g6, bishop d3, you threaten this discovered check. Queen g8, modern theory says it's drawn. Modern theory says it's drawn, but we don't want to go for draw. Here I'm going to show you my novelty. Knight to e3. I stopped d5 for black, since the bishop on c8 is pinned, and they probably go knight c6. I go queen f3, threatening on e7, and jump with knight on d5, threatening both. Knight takes c7 and knight f6. What is much better? That's why instead of knight c6, they play c6. Preparing slowly but surely for d5. Rook f1, threatening on f6. Knight f5, want to take on e7 and use the bishop pair. And when they play d5, knight takes e7. King e7, queen b4 check, and bishop e3. I'd like to discuss about this position. Yes, we're down a pawn, but on the other hand, we have safe king, good king. They have weak king on f7. We got a bishop pair. We got a possibility to break these pawns in the center with both c4 and once again c4. We have an open f island, lots of tactical threats. They can't even move this bishop because b7 is hanging. Practically give me possibility to choose. I would always be white here. And finally, if after queen g4 they play king d8, we just go with queen g3. You can't play knight g6, simply they play d5. That's the point of this king d8 move. Don't forget about this king d8. It's very difficult, but once again, I want to go back to the point where I explained to you previously. Imagine playing against somebody here. He has to know f6, he has to know queen e7, has to be familiar with queen g7. Then when you play queen g4, to shock you with this king d8 move. Like a bunch of extremely difficult defensive moves for black that are very, very unlikely, like to be played by 90% of even good players. So after king d8, you just go queen g3. Watch out, he threatens d5. Queen g3 keeps the threat on g6. They play g5, you play knight f5. Once again, I have two kind of novelties. Here, black can play queen g6 and queen h7. In case they go with queen h7, I'll show you the game between Grandmaster Sergei Rublevsky, nowadays coach of Russian team, who played castle. And when this guy, who was somewhere in between FM and IM, when this guy played c6, Rublevsky played bishop d3, d5 played knight d6, threatened the queen, and after e4 played rook f6, and when the guy took the bishop, played bishop g5, threatens rook f8, double check, and when the guy played bishop e7, Rublevsky played knight f7. Very nice win. The guy immediately resigned, and this was well done and well prepped analysis by Rublevsky. That game was played in part of it set back to 1992. At that time it was Czechoslovakia. So after queen h7, he went with that move. But I even improved that one. You can even play rook f1 with much better possibilities, because after queen h2 you play queen f2, threaten to jump off with this knight, play bishop e3, and play long castles. I don't have anything against this position. I would always choose to be white here, playing with the king on d8, even though you check all the engines, prep everything. You can be sure that you're not going to get under some severe attack, or you won't just be able to defend this position like the engines do. And finally, after knight f5, queen g6, that's the best line. According to the engines, you play bishop d3 and d5. Here I have my own specialty, my own analysis. After knight e7, queen f7, in one game that was played somewhere, I don't remember the year and by whom, white played knight c8, check, and played this position where white certainly has very nice and promising compensation. But I have even better. You play knight g6. You threaten rook and the bishop. They gotta go with rook g8. And here we gotta check two games. In a game played in Israel like 40 years ago, white played castle and they made a draw. I come up with this novelty knight f8 and highly suggest you to play this line. Why? Because if they play rook f8, you play castles, you threaten bishop g5. They have to move the queen and you play c4. Once again, we take advantage of the bishop pair. And once again, we take a very nice possibility to swapping off both of these double pawns, open the king on d8. In case of knight f8, when they capture by queen, we just go rook f1. After you play bishop e3, long castle, c4 and c3, I guarantee that white can only be the one who plays this position for a win and who has the upper hand in this type of the game. Thank you so much, Ash, for requesting this video. Your suggestion was great. I appreciate that very much. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed in this presentation. I'm absolutely sure that the bishop c4 and Morphy Gambit will very soon become one of your favorite weapons with white pieces. Enjoy. Bye-bye.